I appreciate it, and I have once again forgot to turn this on. Leave for 1 week and I forget little things like that. Appreciate you leading the singing for us. I gotta say, I like that last song, although it was a new one for me, so it's always nice to learn something new, though. I mean, if I've heard it, it's been a long time.
I got a little bit high, but other than that, it's a pretty song.
I wouldn't have known if you hadn't told me, so I mean, I thought it sounded great. So, but I appreciate you doing that for us. How's Shirley doing?
She's better, but still having a hard time breathing.
Still in the hospital or home?
No,
or
she's home. There's nothing wrong with her heart at all. They don't know what's wrong. She
Gotcha.
thinks it's because she got the vaccine that she can't breathe all of a sudden.
I'm just going to leave that one alone right there. But okay, glad she's doing better. Glad she's home anyway. Just wanted to check. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on there. Hebrews chapter 11 is where we're going to be. I was easy on this morning. We stayed in one book. You didn't have to turn. You didn't have to worry. We were within a few verses of each other. Tonight, we're not going to jump around a whole lot either. You can stick your finger here in Hebrews chapter 11 and you can turn to the book of Judges. We're going to stay between those two places tonight. Hebrews chapter 11 is a chapter that we're all familiar with. We all know the names that are listed there and the idea of the faith that is involved. We see all these men and women and we know their stories and we see how powerful that faith is and what it allowed them to accomplish in life for God. Now, we wonder at that, we marvel at that, and we think about how impressive that faith is and how it's carried on, and the names and the places and the times that continue to be important to this day. The stories continue to resonate with us of all these different people that we see in all of these stories of their lives. But sometimes I think what we lose when we're looking at these people in these stories here is the idea of humanity. I think at times we look and we see all of these people and we marvel at absolutely how amazing their faith is, and that is part of the reason they're here. But I think part of the reason that they're here is so that we can look and we can understand what God is capable of doing with humanity. We are not perfect. I don't know what you see when you look in the mirror, but I look in the mirror and I see somebody that is making progress. But I also see somebody that continues to need to make progress because I'm not there yet. I have problems, I have sins, I have struggles, I have things that are temptations to me that while I am getting better, they're still there. We see that if we look at the book of Hebrews. We see the stories of people that were not perfect but were able to do magnificent things through God's power, through His ability, and through their faith. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 32. It is a simple verse here. And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets. You want to hear more. The Hebrew writer says, I just don't have time to talk about these. If I kept talking about them, you'd get bored, you'd quit reading, whatever. He just said, time does not allow me to continue this conversation at this time. But I want to throw out a few names to make you think is kind of what he says here. You go back and you think about these people when you have time. Some things I want us to consider as we look at the stories of four of these individuals tonight is that God can, does, and will use flawed people to do great things. So when you look in that mirror and you see somebody that is flawed, you see somebody that's not perfect yet, you see somebody that's still working on their perfection and will never obtain it this side of the grave. Understand that just because we're not perfect, just because we don't have it all figured out, just because we are not satisfied with where we're at right now, does not mean that God cannot do great things through us. And does not mean that if we would not allow Him to, that He would not do great things through us. He is a patient God. While we are working, while we are growing, while we are striving to become more Christ-like each and every day, God is patient with us. He looks at us and He sees that effort. He sees the obedience to the gospel. He sees the fact that we're reading, the fact that we're studying, the fact that we're trying to become more Christ-like. and He's patient with us in our flaws, knowing that we have not achieved perfection yet. But He does require something. He requires our faith to be living faith. He requires our faith to be a giving faith. He requires our faith to be active and to be something that is giving back to Him and back to the world. Our faith is not something that is stagnant. Our faith is not something that we hold to ourselves and that we keep within and that we say, I've got just enough faith to get me through this day. That's not the way faith works. That's not the way God works. I want us also to understand, when we look at the stories of these four individuals, the victory belongs to God. The victory is already there. God has already won. Christ has already risen from the grave. God says that He is coming back to get us again. And on the day of judgment, those who are found to be in Christ will obtain eternal victory. Sin will not win. Satan will not win. The grave will not win. None of these things can possibly defeat God. God has already written it down. He has promised it. He has said that I am the victor. Period. End of discussion. So as we look at the stories of these individuals and we see that at times their faith is struggling, at times they don't know how to act, at times they want to question God, God reminds them the whole time that the victory is mine. But let's start with that first idea. God uses flawed people, people like you and me, people who have a past, people who have sins that we would like to forget, people that have struggles today that we would like to move past but we haven't yet. People who at times have quit struggling with certain sins in our lives and just accepted them. Now that's where the problem lies. When we start to accept sin rather than struggle against it. As long as we are fighting that sinful desire, as long as we are fighting these things of this world, God can and will use us. Let's think about Gideon. What time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah? We're going to look at those four individuals. Gideon did not think he was qualified for the service of the Lord. Gideon's story we see there in Judges chapter 6 and chapter 7. He has all these excuses for God. I am the least of my people. Our family, God, don't you know my family tree? Don't you know what it looks like? Don't you know who I'm related to? We're weak. We are some of the worst in Manasseh, God. And worse yet, I'm the youngest of this family. Look, if you're going to choose this family, God, don't choose me. Choose one of the older ones. Choose one of the stronger ones. Choose one of the smarter ones. Choose one of the better looking. Choose a different family, God. Have you looked at the sin that's in my family? How would you choose me to lead your people, God? And we've used that excuse before in our lives. God, I'm not the one to lead a church. I'm not the one to lead a prayer. I'm not the one to lead singing. God, I'm not the one to teach a class. There's so many people out there that know more than I do. How do you expect me to have a Bible study in my house when I don't know the answers to all the questions, God? How do you expect me to be the one that stands up and brings these people to me or to you, God, when I struggle at times just to walk this straight path myself? I'm the weakest in the church. I'm the youngest member there. I'm the newest convert. I'm the one that struggles with the most hidden sin. God, I know my sins. How can you choose me, God? But Jephthah had his own issues. Jephthah was the son of two sinners, and the world knew it. You know what Jephthah's mother did for a living? She was a prostitute. Which made Jephthah's father what? Equally sinful. The world knows this. The world knows where he came from. The world knows who his family is. And his own family is going to reject him. His half-brothers say, we don't want any part of you. We're going to drive you out of town. You're an embarrassment to the family. We don't want them to know that you're our brother. And if they do, we want them to know that we dealt with you. We don't accept you. We realize that it's not your fault who your parents are, but we don't like it. So I'm going to get rid of you. We're going to send you off. You're going to go somewhere else. You're not going to embarrass our family like that. We don't want the world to know you're here. Samson's no better. We know of all these strong, mighty things that he did. We know of all the things that he should have done for God. We know how he was chosen since before his birth. We know he was set aside. We know that they had prayed for him, that they wanted this son, that they were going to give him back to God. And we know that he consistently made the wrong choices. He consistently put himself in places where he was tempted. And he consistently gave in to that temptation. He fell in love with forbidden women. He went and sought them out. He said, that's the one I want, and I don't care what God says about it. That's the relationship I want, and I don't care what God says about it. I'm going to continue on one hand to try and be God's person. I'm going to continue to enjoy the strength that he gives me and this might and all this power, and I'm going to revel in it, and I'm going to show the world all these strong things I can do. But then I'm going to go have my fun too. I'm going to go live the life I want to live on one day, and the next day, then I'll serve God. Then I'll be with him. Then I'll do what he asked me to do, as long as it doesn't interrupt my fun, God. Then there's Barak. We know that he had a small faith problem at times. Yet we see him here in Hebrews chapter 11, but when we first see him, what's the conversation? Deborah comes and says that, look, you are going to lead God's army and you're going to go and win. The battle is already taken care of. You go do this. And his answer is, okay, but I'll go, but only if you go with me, Deborah. I'll fight this battle, but only if, you're the one telling me that God wants me to do this, so you go with me. You have a relationship with God. Let me bargain with God. Let me make it conditional. God, I'll serve you, but on my terms. I'll fight your battles, but on my terms. I'll fight your battles, but I want to choose the battlefield. I want to choose the army. I want to choose everything. God, I want to take all the guesswork out of it. Now, God determined that Barak would win, but he would not receive the glory for the victory. The glory to the victory was going to go back to someone else because he didn't have enough faith in God. He would defeat the Canaanites, and he would deliver God's people. But it would always be remembered that he did so, hesitantly. God, I just don't really believe enough in what you're saying. We see this story in Judges chapter 4 and chapter 5. God, I'll go, but I want you to send that woman with me. I want you to send somebody else, because I just don't know if what she's saying is true. I just don't know if I'm strong enough. I just don't know if you really believe in me enough, God. I just don't know if I believe in you enough, God. So send your messenger with me. But even after all that, we see him listed here in Hebrews chapter 11. He still went out and fought the battle. He still went out and won the battle for the Lord with God's assistance, with God's direction, with God doing the fighting. He still went out and got it done. Which brings us to our second point. God is patient while our faith grows. All of these people early on, we see some faith problems. We see some issues. We see some struggles. I want to fight the battle, but I'm scared, God. It sounds like a good idea to lead your people, but not really. I'm young. My family's weak. Our name's not that good in this community. The community knows their struggles. God, I'm not the right one. My own brothers didn't like me. They kicked me out. I don't even have a physical family to go back to. we see Gideon. Gideon asked for 3 different proofs that God was really God. And that this message he was receiving is actually true and actually going to happen, and he can actually win. He can actually deliver God's people. Not 1, not 2. He asked 3 different times. Okay, I get that you proved yourself once to me, God. That's not enough. Don't prove yourself again to me, God. Show me one more time that you are really going to fight this battle and win for me, and then I'll be okay. Well, I thought I'd be okay with 2, but can you show me again, God? And God had patience. He was actually patient enough that he offered Gideon a 4th sign. And Gideon needed it. See, he understood that Gideon had what it took. He understood that when the patience paid off, that when he had done these things, that Gideon was going to be a strong and mighty man of God. But he understood it was going to be a growing process. Gideon will get there, but I'm going to help him along the way. Gideon's my man, but I need to help him understand that. I need to help him grow. I need to help him progress. I need to have patience with him as he gets there. God does not expect Gideon, and he does not expect you and me to grow overnight. He does not expect us to have all the answers today. He does not expect us to have perfect faith today. But he does demand that our faith continue to grow. He does demand that we continue to progress and to move and to get stronger and to get better and to become more faithful and to become more Christ-like. And while we're doing that, God has patience with us. But God requires life-giving faith. He is not going to have patience with us if we cannot give this. Even though Barak only had to go into battle, Deborah went with him, he still had enough faith. I mean, there's the faith wasn't what we'd like to see. What we would love to see is him on the front and say, you know what, God, no problem. Deborah's came. I understand she's your woman. I'm going. I got this covered, God. You're by my side. Let's go do this. But what we see is his faith is growing. He has a manner of faith. Okay, God, I think you're right. I know you can do this, but I just need a little nudge. I need a little help. So I'll go fight your battle. But help me out a little more, God. Help me go a little further. Gideon struggled to realize that this is God, that this is who he wants me to be, this is where he wants me to go, this is his battle and we can win. But once he got to that point, once God helped him grow his faith to that point, he had enough faith that he referred to a future battle in past tense. The battle is already won. God has delivered Midian into our hands. He went from not having enough faith to take a step to having enough faith to seeing the future. God's already given it to us. I know this is God. I know this is who he is. That's what we have to have. That faith that gets us to that point, that growth process that gets us to that point, that understanding that while we may be here today saying, God, is this really you? That we've got to move to that point where we say, God, it is you, and the battle is yours. You've won. Now let's go fight this. When he went into battle with 300 men against an army of 135,000. I would say his faith grew just a little bit. From standing there before God, God, I just don't know. I just can't figure this out. God, can you show me one more time that we can actually do this? Okay, God, I'm going to go out there and it's 450 to 1, but we've got this. The battle is already won. And I'm going to tell your people that the battle is already won. That you have already delivered Midian into our hands. That is a growth process. That is faith in action. That is moving beyond that doubt and moving to the understanding that the battle is the Lord's. That's where we need to be. We may be on this side right now where we say, God, I don't know if we have enough people here to change Talco. to moving on to the point where, God, you've already done it. You've already won. The souls are already there. Let's go fight this battle. And I'm going to take it a step further. We talk about the nation and the problems it's having and the things that we see and the politicians that we disagree with and all the heartache and the pain and the division and all of these laws that we see coming into action that we don't like. I'm telling you, the battle's the Lord's. He has won. He just needs people to stand up and fight. He needs people to stand up and say that my God has told me that this is not right and I will not stand for it. He needs people of faith. People who stand up and say, I am a Christian and God has won. All four of these people understood that the battle belonged to the Lord. That victory was already there, that God has already claimed it, that there was nothing the other army or anybody else in this world could do about it. Deborah and Barak sang a song that gave God the credit for the victory over the Canaanites. They knew that God won. They knew that it was not them. They knew that it was not the people on this earth. They knew that God was the victor. Gideon refused to become king over Israel because he knew that God was the only king. And that God was the one that won the battle. God was the one that truly delivered the people of Israel. So he said, I'm not going to stand here and take credit for it. The battle was God's. The victory is His. It belongs to Him and Him alone. It's not me. I'm just an instrument. I'm just a tool. I'm just a weapon. God is the victor. Jephthah knew that God was the only one who could save Israel. And he was willing to be a tool for that very purpose. All right, God, I don't always understand it. But I do understand that you can save this nation. Make me a tool. Make me an instrument. Use me in this battle. That's what we see here. Jephthah had enough faith to fulfill his vow to the Lord. No matter what it cost him personally. No matter what happened on this earth, he said, I made a promise to my God, and I am not walking away from it. And he didn't. And God rewarded him for it. Strong men, strong women. Every human walking around today has a weakness of some sort. And I'm going to tell you that Satan knows our weakness. He is a mighty adversary. He is that lion that is seeking how he can destroy us. He is looking for that opportunity. But we can fall down from time to time. We can struggle with our faith from time to time, and we can still turn back and look at Samson, who gave in to his weaknesses at times, who stumbled at times, who fell at times, but in the end realized that his strength came from God. And when we start to stumble, when we start to fall, when we start to turn back, when we start to look at other things, when we start to lose sight on the victory that God has already claimed for us, we just need to remember Samson. We need to remember where our strength comes from. Satan, I'm not giving in to you today. I'm not going to turn back. I'm not going back to that person I was before. I'm not giving in to that temptation. My God is stronger than you. And victory is His. I will not give in. The end of it all is this. We have flaws. God has never asked for perfect people in the church to fight His battles. In fact, He goes on and chides the self-righteous. He said, I don't want that. I don't need that. That is not the sign of a Christian attitude. I need a humble servant. Somebody willing to say, here I am, send me. Somebody willing to say that as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. God doesn't demand perfection on this side of the grave. He just demands that we are people of faith. That we are striving for perfection, that we are moving in that direction, that we continue to grow our faith. Show the world your flaws. Show them you're not perfect. Show them your sins. Show them where you struggle so that the world can see that God still works through you. And we serve a forgiving and loving God. God can and will use us while helping us overcome our flaws. He does not want us to sit by idly, knowing we've got sin in our life and being okay with it. That's not the point, never will be. God is not okay with us just sitting here and saying, I struggle with that sin, but it's going to be all right. I'll get comfortable where I'm at. I'm not going to move. It's good. No. God demands movement. God demands action. God demands faith that is growing, that is active, that is life-giving. But while we're doing that, He'll help us overcome those flaws. He'll give us the strength that He gave Samson. He'll give us the strength that He gave Gideon. He'll give us the strength that He gave Jephthah. He will continue to provide. Because there are no non-essential workers in His work, in His kingdom. Everybody in this building has a job. Everybody in the kingdom has a job. Everybody present tonight has one soul that they can reach tomorrow. There is somebody out there that you can make a difference in their life. You know people I don't. I know people you don't. You have avenues to people that you can talk to, that you can be with, that I don't. We are all important in this kingdom. We all have to be active workers. We all have to continue to grow. He's patient. We're not perfect yet. But He is moving us towards perfection. But we have to be willing to give Him our life, to commit our life, and to commit our life to this battle regardless of the personal cost. Regardless of what it looks like on this earth, we have to understand that the battle is a kingdom battle, that it is a spiritual battle, and that is what we are fighting. And it's already been won. God has claimed the victory already. So we give God the glory for everything in our lives. We give God we let the world know that God is the one who's got us here, and He's the one that will get us through. We let the world know that God is the winner. If you have not put on Christ in baptism, that's where the battle starts. That's where you overcome sin. That's where you move to that next step, and Satan no longer has control over you. You've given that up. You put to death that sinful body. You become a spiritual creature, starting to fight that battle for Christ. But you have to be baptized. Then once there, we start this battle. We start this process of growing our faith. We start this process of moving towards the kingdom. If you need the prayers of the church, if you need to put on Christ in baptism, whatever your needs are, let's address them tonight as we stand and sing.